Leave, then. If you're so unhappy, just leave. Derek's words cut through the tense air, sharper than the shattered glass underfoot. His face, twisted in anger, barely resembled the man I married 20 years ago. I stood there, in the kitchen of our upscale suburban home, my heart pounding in my chest. This was not the first argument, nor the first time Derek had lashed out. But something about tonight felt different. Maybe it was the coldness in his eyes, or the way my own reflection seemed foreign in the broken mirror. Whatever it was, Derek's challenge didn't scare me. It sparked something within me. A realization that after years of enduring his abuse, I had nothing left to lose. "I will," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. My response surprised us both. Derek's face contorted further, not expecting defiance. He was used to my tears, my pleas for understanding, not this calm declaration of independence. "What did you say?" he hissed, stepping closer, the smell of alcohol on his breath. I said, "I will leave." My own words felt like a stranger's, bold and unrecognizable. Yet they empowered me. For the first time in years, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in Derek's eyes. It was fleeting, but it was there. "You'll come crawling back. You won't last a day without me," he sneered, his confidence returning as he towered over me. But something had shifted within me. The fear that once anchored me in place, making me endure the unendurable, had dissipated, replaced by a resolve as sharp as the broken glass I carefully stepped over as I moved towards the door. "No, Derek, I won't." With those final words, I walked out, leaving behind the shattered remains of our life together. The night air was cool, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere I had just escaped. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay there any longer. As I drove away, the weight of my decision began to sink in. I was alone, truly alone for the first time in 2 decades. The fear and uncertainty of what lay ahead threatened to overwhelm me, but I pushed it aside. Derek had unknowingly given me a gift in his cruelty, the push I needed to escape. The road stretched out before me, dark and uncertain, but I drove on. I had no plan, no destination in mind, just an overwhelming need to distance myself from the man who had made my life a living hell. The night was quiet, the only sound the steady hum of the car engine and the occasional whisper of the wind through the open window. As the miles stretched on, I realized this was more than just a physical departure. It was a journey towards reclaiming life. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and fears I had yet to face. But for the first time in years, I felt a spark of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, I could start over. This was my moment of defiance, my first step towards freedom. The drive felt endless, each mile marker a small victory in my quiet rebellion against Derek's tyranny. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, I found myself pulling into the gravel driveway of my childhood home. The house, much like my life, had seen better days. Its once vibrant paint was chipped and faded, the garden overgrown with weeds. Yet it stood as a testament to a simpler time, a life before Derek. I hadn't planned on coming here, to this relic of my past, but instinct had guided me. As I stepped out of the car, the crisp morning air filled my lungs, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere I had left behind. I was startled by the sound of the front door creaking open. There, framed in the doorway, stood my father, Bill. His hair was more gray than I remembered, his face lined with the passage of time. We had been estranged since he left when I was just a child, the details of his departure a mystery. Now here he was, looking as surprised to see me as I was him. "Ava?" he said, his voice a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "What are you doing here?" I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal, but as I looked into his eyes, something compelled me to be honest. "I left Derek," I said, the words feeling both liberating and terrifying. Bill's expression softened, a flicker of concern passing through his eyes. "Come in," he said, stepping aside to let me pass. The house was as I remembered, a time capsule of happier days. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one we shared meals at when I was a child. As I recounted the events that led to my departure, Bill listened quietly, his face a mask of restrained anger. When I finished, he stood abruptly, pacing the room. "That bastard," he muttered under his breath. "You shouldn't have had to endure that." I was taken aback by his reaction. Despite our estrangement, the concern in his voice was undeniable. "I don't know what to do now," I admitted, feeling lost and vulnerable. Bill stopped pacing and looked at me, his resolve clear. "You're going to stay here, for starters. We'll figure out the rest together." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of a promise, a lifeline in the sea of uncertainty I found myself in. Over the next few days, Derek's attempts to contact me grew more desperate. Each call, each message, was laced with venom, his words a mix of threats and pleas. I had expected his anger, but the depth of his malice shocked me. It was as if the man I married had been replaced by a monster, his true nature finally revealed. One evening, as Bill and I sat in the living room, my phone rang. It was Derek, his voice cold and menacing. "You think you can just leave? You think you can escape me?" he snarled. "You're nothing without me, Ava. You'll come crawling back. Just wait." I felt a surge of fear, but as I glanced at Bill, his expression was one of fierce determination. "No, Derek," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I'm not coming back. Not now, not ever." There was a pause, then a click as he hung up. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Bill placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Ava. We'll make him pay for what he's done." As I looked at my father, a man I barely knew, I felt an unexpected sense of solidarity. Derek had underestimated me, but more importantly, he had underestimated the bond of family. No matter how fractured, together, Bill and I would fight back. This was more than just an escape. It was the beginning of my revenge. The following weeks at my childhood home brought a sense of safety I hadn't felt in years. Despite the years of distance, living with Bill felt natural, as if no time had passed. Yet, beneath the calm surface, a storm of determination brewed within me. I was no longer just a victim fleeing from abuse. I was a woman on a mission for justice. One afternoon, as we sat at the kitchen table surrounded by old photo albums and memories, Bill broke the silence with a question that had been lingering unasked. "What exactly do you want to do about Derek?" he asked, his eyes searching mine for a hint of my intentions. I paused, weighing my words carefully. "I want to expose him," I replied, the resolve in my voice surprising even me. "I want everyone to see him for who he really is." Bill nodded, a grim smile forming on his lips. "I thought you might say that. I have some connections from my past. People who can help us make that happen." I looked at him, curiosity piqued. Bill had always been a mystery, his life before he left a closed book. "What kind of connections?" I asked, both wary and intrigued. He leaned back, the ghost of his old self flickering in his eyes. "Before I left, I wasn't exactly leading a clean life. I knew people who knew people. If we're careful, we can use that to our advantage." The thought of delving into Bill's murky past scared me, but the desire for revenge burned brighter. "Okay," I said, the decision firming in my heart. "Let's do it." Bill's plan was simple, yet risky. We would gather evidence of Derek's misdeeds, not just the abuse, but everything hidden beneath his polished facade. Financial embezzlement, infidelity, the works. With Bill's contacts, we could discreetly spread this information to Derek's colleagues, friends, and the media. The first step was to document everything. I began to recount every incident of abuse, every threatening message Derek sent after I left. Bill listened, his expression hardening with every word. "We'll need proof. Do you have any of the messages, emails, anything that can corroborate your story?" he asked. I nodded, pulling out my phone to show him the barrage of texts and voicemails Derek had left. Each message was a knife's edge, but now they were evidence, ammunition in our battle against him. As we sifted through the digital trail of abuse, Bill's phone rang. He answered, his voice low, speaking in hushed tones. When he hung up, his eyes met mine, a spark of victory in them. That was an old friend. He's in. We can start moving forward with the plan. The following days were a blur of activity. Bill's friend, a man with a talent for uncovering hidden truths, became our ally in the shadows. Together we compiled a dossier on Derek, a damning portrait of a man far removed from the upstanding citizen he pretended to be. One evening, as we reviewed our findings, Bill placed a hand on my shoulder. "Are you sure you want to do this? Once we start, there's no going back," he warned, his voice heavy with the weight of our impending actions. I met his gaze, my resolve unwavering. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said. "It's time Derek faced the consequences of his actions." Bill nodded, a silent agreement passing between us. We were no longer just father and daughter. We were allies in a quest for justice. Derek had underestimated the strength of the bond he had tried to destroy. Together we would bring his empire of lies crashing down. The plan to dismantle Derek's facade of respectability took shape over the following days. With each step we took, my anticipation grew, a mix of fear and exhilaration. Bill's friend, who I came to know as Marcus, proved to be an invaluable asset. His expertise in navigating the murky waters of information gathering and dissemination was unmatched. One evening, as we sat huddled around Bill's old, scarred kitchen table, Marcus laid out the strategy. We need to be smart about this. It's not just about dumping information out there, it's about timing, about ensuring the maximum impact, he explained, his eyes intense. Bill nodded in agreement. Derek's got a big presentation coming up with his firm, some deal that he's been working on for months. That's when we strike. The thought of targeting Derek at such a vulnerable moment sent a shiver down my spine. It was daring, almost reckless. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. It was the perfect opportunity to expose him in front of those who held his professional fate in their hands. How do we do it? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. Marcus leaned forward, a conspiratorial glint in his eye. We've compiled enough evidence to ruin him, but we need to present it in a way that's undeniable. I suggest we create a dossier, a comprehensive report of his financial embezzlement, the abuse, and his infidelities. We'll make sure it lands in the hands of every major player at his firm and the media right before his presentation. The audacity of the plan was breathtaking. It was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my voice, my power from a man who had taken so much from me. Bill's gaze met mine, seeking confirmation. "Are you in?" he asked, his voice a blend of concern and encouragement. I didn't hesitate. Yes, let's do it. The days leading up to Derek's presentation were a blur of activity. Marcus worked tirelessly, ensuring that every detail of the dossier was accurate and irrefutable. Bill and I focused on the logistics, planning how to distribute the information discreetly but effectively. As the day approached, the tension was palpable. We had one chance to get this right. The night before the presentation, we gathered one last time to review our plan. "Once this is out, there's no turning back," Marcus reminded us. "Derek will know it was you, Ava." I swallowed hard, the gravity of our actions weighing on me, but the years of fear and subjugation rose up within me, fueling my resolve. "I know, and I'm ready," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. The morning of the presentation dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the storm we were about to unleash. We executed our plan with precision, ensuring that the dossiers were delivered to their intended recipients just as Derek was about to take the stage. The fallout was immediate and explosive. News of Derek's misdeeds spread like wildfire. His presentation derailed before it could even begin. His colleagues and superiors, confronted with the undeniable evidence of his wrongdoings, distanced themselves, their expressions a mix of shock and disgust. From afar, we watched as Derek's carefully constructed world crumbled around him. The sight of his defeat was both satisfying and sobering. This was more than just revenge. It was a statement, a declaration that I was no longer the woman he had once controlled. As the reality of what we had done settled in, Bill turned to me, his expression one of pride and solidarity. "You did it, Ava. You're free." In that moment, I realized that this was just the beginning. I had taken back my life, but the journey ahead was mine to shape. The battle with Derek might have been won, but the war for my independence was just starting. In the aftermath of Derek's public downfall, the air was thick with anticipation. The exposure of his crimes had sent shockwaves through his firm and our community, tarnishing the reputation he had spent years crafting. Yet as significant as this victory was, Bill, Marcus, and I knew our mission was far from over. Derek was wounded, but not defeated. The real battle was just beginning. We reconvened at Bill's house, our makeshift war room, to plan our next moves. The success of the dossier had bolstered our spirits, but there was a palpable tension in the air. Derek was unpredictable, and we had just backed him into a corner. "His career's in ruins, but that won't be enough for him. He'll be looking for revenge," Bill said, his voice low and steady. "We need to be prepared." Marcus nodded, tapping away at his laptop. "I've been monitoring his communications. He's desperate, reaching out to anyone who might still be on his side." but there's not many left." It was a strange feeling, watching from the shadows as Derek scrambled to salvage what was left of his life. For so long I had been under his thumb, powerless and afraid. Now the tables had turned. "What's our next step?" I asked, ready to press our advantage. "We keep the pressure on," Marcus replied. "We've got evidence of financial embezzlement that we haven't released yet. It's time to make that public." I felt a twinge of apprehension at the thought of further exposing Derek. Despite everything, a part of me still feared the man I had once loved. But I pushed those feelings aside, focusing on the goal at hand. "Do it," I said, my voice firm. The release of the financial records was a calculated strike, timed to cause maximum disruption to Derek's already fragile defense. As expected, it reignited the media frenzy, further isolating Derek from any potential allies. In the days that followed, Derek's attempts to retaliate were frantic and haphazard. Threatening messages and calls became a daily occurrence, each one more desperate than the last. But they no longer had the same effect on me. I was no longer the woman he could intimidate and control. One evening, as we reviewed the latest barrage of threats, Bill looked at me, concern etched into his features. "You're holding up okay?" he asked, his paternal instincts surfacing despite the years of estrangement. I met his gaze, grateful for his support. "I am. It's not easy, but I'm not about to let him scare me into submission. Not anymore." Bill nodded, a proud smile breaking through his usual stoicism. "That's my girl." The final phase of our plan was the most ambitious yet. With Derek's financial indiscretions now public, we turned our attention to his personal life. The infidelity, the lies, the manipulation, all of it was laid bare. We made sure that the evidence was irrefutable, leaving Derek no room to maneuver or deny. As we unleashed this final salvo, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey I had undertaken. From a frightened victim to a woman on a mission for justice, I had transformed. The process had not been easy, and the toll it had taken on me was significant. Yet, as I watched Derek's empire of lies collapse, I knew it was worth it. The gathering storm had broken, and as the dust began to settle, I realized that this was more than just revenge. It was a declaration of my independence, a reclaiming of my life from the shadows of abuse and manipulation. Derek had sought to break me, but in the end he had only forged me into something stronger. As Bill, Marcus, and I sat back, watching the final pieces of Derek's life fall apart, I knew that no matter what the future held, I was ready to face it. I was no longer Ava Reed, the victim. I was Ava Reed, survivor and architect of my own destiny. The culmination of our efforts was set to unfold at a crucial business event where Derek, despite his tarnished reputation, was attempting a desperate comeback. It was to be his final stand, a bid to salvage what little respect he might have left. Bill, Marcus, and I knew this was our moment, the climax of our carefully laid plans. As the event approached, the air was thick with anticipation. We had one last move to make, one that would ensure Derek's complete and utter downfall. The evidence of his embezzlement, coupled with the personal scandals we had exposed, had already weakened him. Now it was time to deliver the final blow. The venue was an upscale hotel, its grand hall filled with Derek's colleagues, competitors, and the media. I arrived with Bill and Marcus, my heart pounding in my chest. I was not the same woman who had fled in the dead of night. I was here to confront my abuser, to stand in the light and speak my truth. As Derek took the stage, confidently beginning his presentation, I could see the arrogance in his stance, the belief that he could still control the narrative. He was unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Bill gave me a nod, and I stood up, my voice steady as I called out, interrupting Derek's speech. "How can you stand there and pretend to be a man of integrity?" The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. Derek's face turned white, then red with rage. "Ava, sit down. This is not the place for personal grievances," he said, trying to regain control. "This is exactly the place," I countered, my voice echoing in the stunned silence. "Everyone here needs to know the truth about you." I proceeded to reveal everything. With Marcus's help, we displayed the evidence on the large screens around the room. Financial records, photographs, emails, the full extent of Derek's deceit and cruelty was laid bare for all to see. The reaction was immediate. Murmurs of shock and disgust rippled through the crowd. Derek attempted to deny the accusations, to dismiss me as a spiteful ex-wife, but the evidence was irrefutable. You can't possibly believe this. This slander. Derek spluttered, his facade crumbling. Why? Because the truth hurts? I shot back, my confidence growing with each word. You've lied, cheated, and abused your way through life, Derek. It's over. Derek's eyes searched the room for any sign of support, but he found none. His colleagues, many of whom had been friends, averted their gazes, unwilling to associate with a man so thoroughly exposed as a fraud and a bully. As he realized the magnitude of his defeat, Derek's anger turned to desperation. He made a move to leave the stage, but the media swarmed him, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. His career, his reputation, his very identity were disintegrating before our eyes. Bill and Marcus stood by my side, a united front against the man who had caused so much pain. As we watched Derek being swallowed by the chaos he had created, I felt a profound sense of closure. The confrontation was not just about revenge, it was about justice. It was about reclaiming my life from the shadows of fear and oppression. Derek had sought to destroy me, but in standing up to him, in speaking my truth, I had found a strength I never knew I had. As we left the venue, the weight of the past years seemed to lift. I had faced my abuser not as a victim, but as a survivor. The road ahead would not be easy, but I knew that with Bill and Marcus by my side, I was ready to face whatever came next. The battle was won, but the war for my independence had just begun. The aftermath of Derek's public exposure was swift and merciless. The media frenzy that followed the event at the hotel was unlike anything I had ever seen. Derek's name was everywhere, synonymous with deceit, embezzlement, and abuse. His firm quickly distanced themselves, issuing a statement condemning his actions and confirming his immediate termination. In the days that followed, Derek became a pariah. His attempts to reach out, to explain or justify his actions, were met with cold shoulders and closed doors. His world, once so grand and imposing, had shrunk to the confines of his lavish, now very lonely home. One morning, as Bill, Marcus, and I sat at the kitchen table, planning our next steps, my phone rang. It was Derek. I hesitated, glancing at Bill and Marcus. With a nod of encouragement from them, I answered. "Ava, please." Derek's voice was barely a whisper, a far cry from the confident, commanding tone I was used to. "I've lost everything. Isn't that enough for you?" I felt a pang of something akin to pity, quickly overshadowed by the memories of his cruelty. "You brought this on yourself, Derek. You thought you could hurt me, control me, and face no consequences. You were wrong." There was a pause, and then Derek let out a heavy sigh. "What do you want from me, Ava?" "Justice," I replied without hesitation. "I want you to face the consequences of your actions. The legal proceedings for the embezzlement charges are just the beginning." Derek was silent for a moment. "I'll lose everything," he said, a note of realization in his voice. "You should have thought of that before," I said, and then, with a sense of finality, I ended the call. The legal battle that ensued was intense. Derek's attempts to defend himself against the embezzlement charges were feeble at best. With the evidence stacked against him, it was only a matter of time before the court found him guilty. The sentence was harsh but fair, reflecting the severity of his crimes. But it wasn't just the financial crimes that were brought to light. The abuse I had suffered, the years of torment and fear, were now part of the public record. Derek was ordered to pay a significant settlement, a small compensation for the pain he had caused. As I stood outside the courthouse, the settlement check in hand, I felt a mix of emotions. The money was a tangible acknowledgement of the suffering I had endured, but it could never erase the memories, the scars that remained. Bill and Marcus joined me, their presence a comforting reminder of the support I had found in them. "What will you do now?" Marcus asked, his voice gentle. I looked at the check in my hand, then back at them. "I'm going to rebuild," I said, my voice steady. "Not just my life, but my home. It's time to turn the page, to start a new chapter." Bill smiled, a look of pride in his eyes. "We'll be there with you, every step of the way." As we walked away from the courthouse, I realized that this was not the end of my journey, but the beginning. Derek's downfall had freed me from the chains of fear and oppression, but it was the support and love of Bill and Marcus that had truly saved me. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about the future. I had faced my darkest fears, confronted my abuser, and emerged victorious. The scars of the past would always be a part of me, but they no longer defined me. I was Ava Reed, survivor, and my story was far from over. The renovation of the childhood home where I sought refuge became a symbol of my healing journey. Each stroke of paint, each nail hammered in, was a testament to my resilience, my transformation from a victim into a survivor. Bill and Marcus were by my side, lending their strength and support to rebuild not just a house, but a home filled with hope and new beginnings. One crisp morning, as we stood looking at the nearly finished home, Bill wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "You've done something incredible, Ava. Not just with this house, but with your life. You should be proud." I smiled, a sense of peace settling over me. "I am, Bill. For the first time in a long time, I am." Marcus joined us, his hands covered in paint. "It's more than just a house. It's a fortress, a symbol of everything you've overcome." The house, with its bright new colors and repaired structures, stood stark against the memories of the darkness I had endured. It was a beacon of light, of strength, and of the possibility of new beginnings. As we stepped inside, the warmth and light-filled spaces spoke of the future, of the life that was waiting for me beyond the shadows of the past. The kitchen, where we had shared so many plans and dreams, the living room, where laughter had replaced tears, and the bedroom, a sanctuary of peace and solitude, all echoed the transformation within me. In the days that followed, Derek's downfall continued to unfold. The news of his sentencing and the legal ramifications of his actions served as a stark reminder of the consequences of his choices. Though I no longer sought vengeance, there was a sense of justice in knowing that he would face the repercussions of his actions. But my story was no longer about Derek. It was about me, about the journey I had undertaken to reclaim my life, my identity, and my freedom. One evening, as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Bill, Marcus, and I sat on the front porch, the cool breeze carrying the promise of new beginnings. "You know, Ava, this is just the start," Marcus said, his voice reflective. "You've got a whole new life ahead of you." I nodded, the reality of his words sinking in. "I know, and I'm ready for it, for whatever comes next." Bill took my hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll be here for you, every step of the way. You're not alone anymore." The knowledge of their support filled me with gratitude and a sense of belonging. I had found a family, not by blood, but by choice, by the shared experiences and the battles we had fought together. As the stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, I realized that this was more than a new dawn for me. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, to the power of love and support, to overcome even the darkest of times. Derek, once a looming shadow over my life, had become a distant memory, a reminder of the battles I had fought and won. The scars he had left were part of my story, but they no longer defined me. I was Ava Reed, a woman who had faced her darkest fears and emerged victorious. My journey was a testament to the fact that it was possible to break free from the chains of abuse, to rebuild, and to find happiness and peace on the other side of pain. As I looked ahead to the future, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same courage and determination that had brought me this far. I was ready for the new dawn, for the new life that awaited me, filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities.